Today, we're going to be covering the FB10 Fusion World metagame. After the soft reset of FB09, the game is finally settling into its new form. Decks are more explosive and consistent than ever, and a lot of older decks have been wiped away. But this new direction of the game is very interesting, and today I'm going to be pulling from tournament results and personal experience playing this game competitively to rank every viable deck in the game. Keep in mind this video is not a power ranking. I'm going to be using results as a general guideline for placements, but there will be some that will be based on theory instead of hard results, because that just makes the tier list more interesting. Regardless, the best deck in the format is pretty undebatable right now. SS3 is far and away the best deck in the game. It makes up a large portion of top cut in most regionals, and has the most regional wins of any deck in the formats. It's not the only regional winning deck, but it's definitely the most consistently successful one. One of the reasons this deck is so good is its pressure. Against high life decks that have bad removal, it can go wide with card neutral 2-drops. When you're against lower life decks, or you're going for the kill against anyone, you can just develop a bunch of 30Ks and swing 30K like 4 to 5 times in a turn. It's incredibly oppressive, and you can do it back-to-back turns with the right hand. It also has one of the best removal cards in the game, that being Warrior who defeats the Evil Demon. This card is so ridiculous. Like, in a format where every removal spell is a -1, being able to go card neutral with your removal is crazy. Sure, it can't out 5 or higher permanently, but most games will end so quickly that the freeze is effectively hard removal. The deck also has a ton of adaptability. There's lots of space in the deck's curve because you have that 2 extra energy every single turn, and there's lots of room in the deck for tech cards as well. You really only need the core evolve cards and a few extras, and the rest can just be all techs if you want to. You can run Blue Power Awakening to deal with high cost cards. You can run blockers to deal with one-turn kill decks like Beaston. You can run the SER, you can run the Vegeta package. There's so many options for this deck, and we've seen, even historically, when this deck has fallen off a little bit, it always bounces right back next format because there's just so much you can do with it. There isn't really any threat in the game that you can't deal with some kind of tech card. Even though decks like Beaston and Vegito can definitely give us 3-1 for its money, those matchups aren't unwinnable. Even your bad matchups are completely salvageable by a really good S3 pilot, and I think this is definitely the most consistent deck in tournaments because there isn't really a deck that straight up counters you. You're always in the game with SS3. And I hope you like this deck because it is getting even more cards come Story Booster. Hopefully we're not in a Tier 0 metagame by then, but we will see. This deck's already so good, I can't imagine how it'll be with multiple new best-in-slot cards coming in the next set. It's definitely the best deck in the game, and it really shapes the entire meta around it. Every other tier is really going to be defined by how they deal with SS3. Our next tier is going to be the best decks in the format. These decks are not quite SS3 level, but they have the capacity to win regionals. They have the strongest engines and matchup spreads, and are typically defined by having anywhere from good to decent SS3 matchups. They also usually have mechanics that completely invalidate older decks, keeping the meta centralized around them. Our first deck here is going to be Beaston. This has been the breakout success of FB10. It was okay last format, but the cards in FB10 really completely fixed the deck. They have the Piccolo chain now, making your leader a 25k, 30k swing on your turn, and then you also have early removal with the new 2-drop and the new promo. The deck is really famous for its insane kill turn. It can go like 50 with the Beaston, then like, I don't know, key dump 90 something with leader, and then 50k again double strike. And especially post FB10, the deck's curve is really tight. It's one of those late game green decks we've had for a while in the game. It's not a ramp deck, but it does play very similarly to a deck like Piccolo SH or Androids, where you're trying to like stall for 4 turns and then do big pressure turns with 8 drops on your turn 5. But unlike those decks, Beaston actually has removal. You can remove 1 drops on turn 2, and you can remove 2 to 3 drops on turn 3 and 4 if you want to. And this is huge. I mean, these kinds of decks have never had that before, so being able to stabilize like that, even just a little bit, into aggro decks makes Beaston a lot more viable into the metagame than those other late game green decks have been. It also beats SS3, which is cool. They do have techs they can run into Beaston, like the blockers, but forcing SS3 into multiple bad cards just to beat you, I think is a pretty huge accomplishment, and it shows that Beaston is quite good at this format. Its only issues really are consistency and some bad rogue matchups. But again, it's like Vegito, where if you see SS3s all day, you're probably feeling pretty good. Next up is Vegito. This is a deck that seems like it was designed by Bandai specifically to beat SS3. That condition on the SER, your opponent being at 3 or less life, means that SS3 is always going to be in range of the mill. Only 2 hits Vegito needs into your board or your face to get a mill 30 and effectively kill you. That said, I have seen debate over whether this deck actually beats SS3 consistently. I feel like Vegito pilots will often tell you this deck does beat it, whereas SS3s tell you that they can definitely get there. It's a point of contention that I've seen among people I've talked to. But regardless, having game in SS3 is good. Like, most decks can't even compete with it. The leader also has a lot of things going for it. You have massive swings, some of the biggest swings in the game. You can go 50k or higher with your leader. You have 40k and 35k swings every turn as well. You can make your leader 25k with the Vegito, which is great in any format, but especially now with the SS3s running around. Going to 25k is really good. It gets under their 20k bodies and gets you a 10k to get out of their 30k swings. Also, great removal. You have really efficient early game removal with that Goku, and then decent top end removal with the Kamehameha. The deck has a few big weaknesses, though. I'd say the first one is low hand size. Almost all the evolve lines minus you, so that's not great. You're also a 4-life leader, which is really steep in today's meta, especially with decks like Beaston running around that can just kill you at 4. And it also really struggles with high life decks. All of your pressure comes from these big swings. If your opponent just stays high life, they can just take your leader swing every turn, and you're effectively not getting any benefit out of those massive swings. Regardless, though, beating SS3, even dubiously, is a pretty big deal, and the deck definitely has a good place in the metagame. If you can get the top cut and you're seeing SS3s all the time, you're feeling pretty good. And the final deck in this tier is BR. BR has been an excellent deck since FB09. It was one of the original good decks of this soft reset. It hasn't actually won many events. I believe it hasn't won a single regional this format specifically, but it's always been in top cut. Like, you can always find this deck in top 8s. It definitely feels like it could win a regional any moment. It's just like not gotten the run it needs. First of all, it's one of the most consistent decks in the game. You have a recurable top 4 searcher that you can play multiple times per turn while still doing your engine. You can also remove stuff and apply pressure simultaneously, which is always a hallmark of a good deck. Removal is basically incidental to your main engine, so you can just play the game and get paid to do it. And the deck got new cards in FB10, which definitely have helped as well. The Tax Goku has given this deck a huge boost into SS3 specifically. Now they can't rely on results of training to stay alive as well. But the deck has gotten the Barrier Vegeta, so it's kind of a toss-up there on who got the better end of the deal. One thing I'll say about this deck, and the reason why I think it might not have won original yet, is because it's very telegraphed. You know exactly what BR is going to do when you develop a threat. It's pretty obvious what their answer is going to have to be if they want to stay in the game, so they really can't catch you by surprise with many tech cards or interesting plays. It's really just a check of, like, can you draw the cards you need to beat BR? If you can, you win. If you can't, you lose. Doesn't really have the flexibility a deck like SS3 has to adapt to the metagame, but still a strong deck nonetheless. Our next category is going to be decks that I think have a reasonable chance of topping regionals, but not a great chance of winning them completely. These decks are very good picks and can definitely get there with a really skilled pilot, but have some glaring issues in either matchup spreads or consistency. The first of these is going to be UIQ, and I want to preface this by saying that UIQ actually has some really good results this format. It has 2 really good results. This deck actually did win a regional. It was the Brisbane regional, and that was a bit of a smaller event, so I weighted it a little bit less in my consideration, but definitely a huge accomplishment for this deck regardless. It also came second at Gen Con recently, and if you haven't seen that Gen Con list, I'll go ahead and throw it up right now. It's really cool, 60 card list, a ton of different tech in there. It's pretty awesome, and definitely makes me think this deck has a lot of room for exploration, this format. I'm not rating this deck higher, though, because it isn't very consistent with its results. Yes, it has a few really good placements, but you don't usually see it in top 8. It's a very rare deck. I feel like it's one of those decks where, like, a really good pilot comes along every once in a while and takes it farther than most people can. The deck has great tools in SS3, though. Having that redirect is really strong. They can't really double strike you. And you have Divine Domain for free, basically, so you're getting 15k out of 30k swings. That's pretty good. The main thing with this deck, though, just like Sin back in Nat's format, is its insane skill ceiling, because there's so much micro with how you're arranging cards in the bottom of your deck. Eventually, when you get to the late game, every card you draw is going to be a card that you put back in your deck. So it's like, can you map out which cards you'll need in 4 to 5 turns, and can you not screw yourself over by, like, you know, not putting a tech card back you might need, or not putting enough supers back, or not putting enough column pieces back. So much to consider with how you're managing resources on field and drop and deck and hand, and like how you're drawing cards and when you're discarding cards. It's very tough to play. I definitely think this is one of those decks where, like, it's not the best deck in the format, but if you put in a lot of work with it, you can definitely go over the top of a lot of really good players. Next deck on the list is going to be GT. This was one of the first top decks of the soft resets. It's kind of fallen off, but still gets intermittent top 8s here and there. Really, this deck's biggest strength is its 6 energy play. Once you get 6 energy, you can play that SCR, turn skip, get multiple 40k swings, draw 4 Gen 2 markers. It's pretty ridiculous, but obviously you have to get there, and getting to turn 6 in this format can be a bit tough sometimes. The deck is very defensive, though. You have access to Ultimate Sparkling, which is almost always online in this deck, and you have Pinnacle, which forces a lot of decks in the format to not swing with their lower end bodies. Effectively, just by having this card in your deck, you're saving cards in the long run against most matchups, which is pretty nice. The deck's biggest issue, though, and this has been its issue since day one, is consistency. If you hit your perfect curve with this deck, it feels unbeatable, feels like the best deck in the game, but that curve is really hard to hit. You need, like, 4 to 5 cards, and you're a high life leader with minimal draw power, so actually finding that curve is really tough for GT. And that's why I'd say it hasn't won a regional yet, because over the course of like 8 games, needing to hit that curve every single time is going to be tough, right? You're going to whiff once, and when you do whiff, you're in a pretty bad spot. But still a very good deck, also a very skill-intensive deck, and you can definitely get there with the right pilot. And finally, in this tier, we have Namaku. So this placement is not really supported by results, but I'm putting it here regardless because I think people should be playing this deck. I think it is much better than it's given credit for, and is heavily underrated this format. It did top last format a bunch. I took this deck to a few tops in FB09, and I wasn't the only one. There were other Namakus as well who topped in that format, and the format's only gotten better for this card. Like, I don't understand why it's not topping now when the format is objectively so much better for Namaku. We had matchups like Vegito and Beast on the format now, which are pretty good for us, and of course we still have VR, which we completely curb stomp. I played this almost exclusively throughout the formats, and it felt really good every tournament. I only dropped a few games across the entire season. I think the deck is really good. Has a lot going for it. Primarily, it leaves a lot of room for skill expression. Your curve is pretty obvious, but the way you use your key and manage it across the game leaves a lot of room for adaptability, and you can really metagame certain matchups with how you manage your key. The deck also has a 45k crits that most decks can't out, like Beaston and Vegito, they just can't deal with a 7-drop. That's going to stay on the field forever, or at least, long enough to do some serious damage. The deck's really strong right now. The only issue is SS3. This deck cannot be SS3 under any circumstances. I've spent the better part of the format grinding that matchup, trying to figure it out. I know a lot of other Namakus have as well. It just seems unwinnable. I don't think it's possible against good SS3s, but in a regional, you don't really need to be beating SS3s, at least not entirely. You're realistically going to see like 1 or 2 really good ones. If you can just beat everyone else, you have a very good shot at top 8 or top 16 or whatever. I think the deck is still a pretty solid pick, but if you want to win the entire event, probably not going to be the best thing to go for. So our next tier is going to be rogue decks. These are going to be decks that might do 1 or 2 things very well, and might creep into the metagame a little bit, but generally have some pretty severe weaknesses that are going to keep them from being one of the top decks. First of these is Spirit Goo. Spirit Goo is a very interesting deck because it has insane inevitability. Eventually, you will die to this deck, right? They're swinging like 70k with their 2-drop Gokus. They're burning you with the Krillins. They will get you to 3. Once you go to 3, you're pretty much dead. And its game plan does feel really good into lower life decks, specifically like the 5 or 4 life decks. You can just get a burn with the Krillin, swing once with the big Goku, and then get a triple strike for a game. It's a pretty consistent and powerful win condition. The deck has one massive weakness though, or I guess like multiple. You need to find you need to find the Hercule, that's one of the big ones. But the actual big weakness is that you can't out 40k bodies whatsoever. If you're unfamiliar, the removal spell for this deck says it can only out cards with an original power of 35k or less. You can't even minus something and then kill it. You straight up can't kill 40ks at all. This means cards like Uiku or Yellow Gogeta completely wall this deck. And I think this is the main reason why this deck hasn't been able to get a foothold in this format. Blockers can be an issue also, but this deck does have a lot of outs to blockers. It's really just going to be those 40k bodies that are a huge problem for it. The next deck is Yellow Gogeta. Might be underrating this deck a little bit. It might be slightly better in Rogue tier. I think it actually has gotten a few top 8s, but it hasn't gotten amazing results this format. It does seem very strong though. Has a huge toolbox of options, even more so than SS3. Has incredible kill power. You can go triple swing with your 30k Goku, which is actually one thing this deck has over SS3. That triple 30k off one Goku is pretty ridiculous. Some yellow players will swear by this deck, and it definitely is very strong. Very skill intensive. I think that you can make an argument for it this format, but it has a few weaknesses, namely being 4 life is super dire right now. You really need a great reason to be a 4 life leader, and this deck only starts like popping off on turn 5 when you can go for the 6-drop. Until then, you are just moving so slowly, and it's hard to justify a deck that centers around your 6-drop when decks like Vegito are running around that can just bot deck it. But I do think this deck is strong, and definitely it's something to keep an eye out for as yellow keeps getting support. Next up, we have our second yellow deck. This is Bojack. This deck really just draws a million cards. It draws a whole bunch. It got some results early in the format. It's kind of fallen off since then. It's just an obnoxious deck. Has a free freeze that draws a card. That card's actually really good. Has a 25k body that just keeps bringing itself back whenever it's KO'd. Just so many obnoxious things about this deck. 20k swings, just a ton of 20k swings constantly. But I think that is really one of the big issues of the deck. It only just swings 20. And in a format where multiple leaders can make their leader 25k, that is pretty rough. It also has no finisher in Archetype. Your only real win condition is just single striking your opponent, which never feels too good. and also 0 removal. Your only removal is by battle or freeze, and that can really start to get steep in the late game. However, this deck does just draw a lot of cards, right? You can draw twice off leader every turn, 2 more cards with Zangia. Drawing 4 every turn is very good, and this deck is just annoying because it has cards in hand constantly, and it can just keep chugging. Can definitely get there against some of the top decks, but it has a lot of weaknesses right now. I know this deck is getting a card that makes the leader crit. I think that's going to be very good for the deck, but we'll see if that matters by FB11 when that card comes out. And then we also have Vegeta in this tier. I think yellow is generally just good. I think you can make the argument for a lot of yellow decks being in rogue tier, just because they have so many tools from SS3, and just even before SS3, yellow was really pushed. But yellow Vegeta is really one of the only old decks still around. It's still playing like an old school pre-FB09 deck, which is pretty cool, playing a lot of old staples. The deck is playing like it always has, trying to go for a barrier blocker, and then eventually flex into a Broly win condition in the late game. Just a bunch of single strikes and blockers and results of training. Very obnoxious. Also, it is a 6-drop heavy format, so that floodgate is going to be huge for the deck. The deck does, however, benefit from the Vegeta package. I think this package is just very good in yellow decks in general, especially the older ones. You can play a few of the rest Vegeta, a few of the Evolve one, and you have a very nice removal package right there. Really, this deck's big weakness is that it's just playing old cards. It's playing old cards and it's playing slow cards. And in a meta that's so fast, it can feel a bit underwhelming at times. A skill player can definitely get there with Yellow Vegeta. It still feels like a fine deck. I think it's a testament to how good this deck is that even with almost every old deck power crept, this deck is still getting some sparse results this format. Next up, we got Turles. You probably haven't seen this deck around much, but it is actually pretty good, this format. Check out my latest video if you want to see a list for it. But I will say, this placement is only for online sim play. In person, this deck does not yet have its promo, which heals you. That card completely cracks the deck in half, and I don't think this deck's going to do much without that promo. With that promo, this deck is quite good, and I think it would have been fringe regional contender had it had that promo in time. It has insane pressure turns. That turn 4 chain is pretty ridiculous. Multiple 30k swings and a bunch of board presence. You can also mount a huge energy advantage with your fruit if you awaken on turn 3. You can immediately start ramping and go to like 6 energy on your opponent's turn 4. It's pretty ridiculous. The deck's also able to leverage a free 15k combo offensively and defensively whenever it wants. Being able to combo 15 for free is very good this format, especially into SS3. So I think this deck has lots going for it. It does tend to run out of steam in the late game. It's very piece reliant. It kind of plays like an evolve deck where you need to find a multi-card combo every single turn to get going. Fortunately, you're playing green and you have a lot of heal, so you can just take life to find those cards. But it is still a pretty intensive combo. And once the game goes on, you're going to lose that energy advantage because you have to stay around 5 energy for the leader effect. But yeah, Turtles is good in the sim right now. Hopefully we get that promo sometime soon. I'd like to play this deck in person, but we will see. For now, it is a fine deck. And the last deck I wanted to cover on this tier is Black Cell. This deck has some pretty cool high rolls. You can develop a 6-drop on turn 2 with Marker, which is quite nice. I'm doing any of that like 6-drop cheese with 18 is going to minus you cards in hand, but being able to develop such a powerful threat so early is usually worth the cards you'll be losing for that chain. It also has one of the craziest win conditions in the game. The Double Striker is insane and can hit ridiculous numbers, almost as big as Spirit Coup. The real issue with this deck is getting your opponent to 2. It can be tough, especially with the win condition that's so telegraphed. Like, why would your opponent ever go to 2 against this deck unless they absolutely have to? So the win condition is kind of irrelevant at that point because your opponent is never going to 2 against this deck unless you're tapped out. They can kill you next turn. The deck did see results early in the format, kind of like a lot of the decks in this tier, and then fell off eventually, which is unfortunate. I think this deck does have a lot of potential. It just needs a few more cards, probably. Definitely feels okay. Not quite a top deck, but can get there for sure. Anyway, that was my tier list video. Hope you all enjoyed. Sorry it was a bit late. I usually try and make these late in the format so I can get as much experience with the decks as possible before I make my my placements. But let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this format. I've been having a pretty good time with it. I usually only make these videos for formats that I think are interesting. And this is a pretty interesting format for sure. I am a bit worried about SSTO1 formats. SS3 might be tier 0. It's getting a lot of new cards. It's already really good. But we will see. We will see. Hopefully Bandai does not fumble again and creates a tier 0 deck. But it's happened before. So who knows? I'll be here regardless. It'll be really tough to make videos if I'm seeing SS3s every game. But we'll figure it out. Thank you all for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye. And in Cope tier, we we of course have our boy Jiren. People are still gassing this deck, even though the best deck in the format now can just place it and draw for free. Maybe there was something there. Like maybe in FB08 when I made this video when I made my last tier list video, there was something there. But right now with Demon in the with the extra in the game, I don't know how you could ever argue for this deck. But people still do, and he's gonna be here. You better believe he's gonna be here every single tier list, even once he has support. I'm still putting him here. I think it's pretty solid. I think honestly people just are underrating Jiren. I think he could probably get a top 8 if people really tried hard with it. Yeah, it seems. I think playing 6-drop Uiku in FB09 seems really good. So I don't know how that could possibly lose.